My daughter-in-law called 3 times in one day asking where Brian was. That's when I knew something was terribly wrong. When I finally drove to his apartment after 2 weeks of silence, I looked through his kitchen window and saw plans to rob me spread across his table. What I discovered made my hands shake so badly I could barely hold my phone to record the evidence. Before we continue, please subscribe to Whispered Vengeance and write in the comments what time it is where you are right now. The coffee mug hit the counter harder than I intended when Brian slammed through my back door without knocking. His shirt was wrinkled and his eyes had that desperate look I'd seen too many times before. 32 years old and still barging into his father's house like a teenager who'd missed curfew. "Dad, I need $18,000. No greeting, no explanation, just a demand wrapped in urgency." Ashley's medical bills came back, denied by insurance. If we don't pay by Friday, they're sending it to collections. I set down the electrical bill I'd been reviewing and studied my son's face. Brian had inherited Linda's dark eyes, but right now they held something my late wife would never have shown. Calculation. Desperation without dignity. "Brian, Ashley posted photos at the coast last weekend. That resort isn't cheap if you're drowning in medical debt." I kept my voice level, measured. The way I'd learned to speak after 40 years of diffusing conflicts on construction sites. He started pacing between my kitchen table and the refrigerator, his expensive running shoes squeaking against the tile floor. "That trip was booked months ago, Dad. Before we knew about Ashley's condition. This is life or death money we're talking about. Life or death." I removed my reading glasses and set them carefully on the stack of bills. Like the $12,000 you needed 6 months ago for business inventory that never materialized. Or the $8,000 before that for the down payment on equipment you never bought. Brian's jaw clenched. The pacing stopped. "You're bringing up ancient history while your daughter-in-law might lose her insurance coverage permanently. What kind of grandfather are you going to be?" That hit like a gut punch. Exactly as he'd intended. Linda had died 2 years ago without ever meeting a grandchild. The grief still woke me some mornings, sharp enough to steal my breath. "If Ashley's pregnant, that's wonderful news," I said carefully. "But I'm not an ATM for whatever scheme you're running this time. Show me the medical bills. Show me the insurance denial. Then we'll talk." His face flushed red. "You want documentation? You want proof your own son is telling the truth? After everything Mom and I went through taking care of you when you hurt your back? Your mother took care of me. You visited twice in 3 months. The memory still stung, but facts were facts. And I paid for that physical therapy out of pocket because you convinced me to drop my supplemental insurance to save money." Brian grabbed the back of the kitchen chair with both hands, knuckles white. The afternoon light streaming through my window highlighted the veins bulging in his neck. "You're sitting on a pile of cash while your family suffers. Mom would be ashamed of you." I stood slowly, my lower back protesting after sitting hunched over paperwork for an hour. At 65, I'd learned that people who invoked the dead usually had the weakest arguments. Your mother would tell you to get a job that pays more than unemployment benefits. I met his gaze directly. She'd tell you that a man provides for his family through work, not by guilting his father into funding a lifestyle he hasn't earned. The chair flew backward, clattering against the stove. "You think you're teaching me some lesson, you selfish old man?" Brian's voice dropped to something cold and sharp. "I know where you keep that money. I know you don't trust banks after what happened to Grandpa. And I know you go to the gym every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 o'clock without fail." The threat hung between us like smoke. Not subtle, not even clever. Just raw intimidation from someone who'd apparently forgotten I'd raised him to be better than this. "Brian, I think you should leave." He stared at me for another 10 seconds, chest heaving, before spinning toward the door. It slammed hard enough to rattle the window frames. I stood alone in my kitchen, looking at the overturned chair and feeling the weight of 32 years of fatherhood pressing down on my shoulders. The house felt too quiet after Brian's explosive exit. I righted the fallen chair and noticed a small scuff mark on the stove where it had impacted. Linda's voice echoed in my memory as I traced the mark with my thumb. "Robert, if you bail him out every time, he'll never learn consequences." She'd said that when Brian was 19 and needed money after wrecking his car street racing, I'd wanted to pay for the repairs. Linda had insisted he work it off himself. She'd been right then, just as she'd be right now. Walking to the living room, I settled into my recliner and picked up Linda's photograph from the side table. 38 years of marriage, and she'd never once seen me waver on a principle that mattered. Would she approve of my hardline stance with Brian? Or would she say, family comes first, even when family was lying? I set the picture down and walked to the garage. My real savings weren't in a bank account Brian could trace or in a safety deposit box that could be accessed with the right paperwork. Behind a false wall panel I'd built myself, hidden where only Linda and I had known to look, sat $58,000 in cash. Money from side jobs, Linda's life insurance payout I couldn't bring myself to deposit, and decades of careful saving from a man who'd watched his father lose everything when Valley Bank collapsed in '92. I didn't remove the panel or count the money. Just knowing it was secure, protected from Brian's impulsiveness, gave me the reassurance I needed. Linda had trusted me to protect our future. I wouldn't fail that trust by enabling our son's worst habits. The next morning, I tried calling Brian while drinking my coffee. Straight to voicemail. I waited an hour and tried again. Nothing. By evening, I'd left 3 messages, each one more concerned than the last. Brian, let's talk. Whatever's happening, we can work through it. Thursday brought more silence. I checked his social media accounts, something I rarely did, and found nothing posted since our confrontation. No photos, no updates, no sign he existed anywhere in the digital world. Friday afternoon, Ashley called while I was replacing a light fixture in my bedroom. Her voice sounded strained. Robert, have you heard from Brian? He left 3 days ago saying he needed to clear his head, and he's not answering my calls. 3 days? My stomach dropped. Ashley, he was here Tuesday demanding money. Said you had medical bills. A long pause. What medical bills? Robert, I'm healthy. We don't have any bills in collections. After hanging up, I sat on my bed and stared at the phone. Brian had lied. Not just exaggerated or bent the truth, but manufactured an entire crisis involving his wife's health. That level of deception required planning, required desperation beyond what I'd understood. By Sunday evening, a week had passed since Brian's explosive visit. No calls, no texts, no indication where he'd gone or what he was planning. Ashley had filed a missing persons report, but Portland police said adults had the right to disappear if they weren't in immediate danger. Monday morning, Jake Morrison called. Jake had been Brian's best friend since middle school, now working as a mechanic in Gresham. Mr. Hendricks, I hate to bother you, but have you seen Brian? He borrowed $2,000 from me last month, said he'd pay me back by now, but his phone's dead. $2,000. I closed my eyes. What did he say he needed it for? Business opportunity. Said he was investing in some import company. Jake's voice carried embarrassment. Look, I know he's had money problems before, but he seemed really sure about this one. After Jake hung up, I made a list of what I knew. Brian demanded $18,000, using Ashley's fake medical crisis as cover. He'd borrowed $2,000 from his best friend. He'd threatened me with knowledge of my savings location and my gym schedule. He'd disappeared completely after I refused to help. That's when the cold certainty settled in my chest. Brian wasn't missing. He was planning something. Tuesday morning arrived with rain, typical for Portland in October. I dressed for the gym as usual, gathered my water bottle and towel, then stopped. If Brian was watching, if he'd meant those threats seriously, he'd expect me to follow my routine without variation. 3 o'clock every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 8 years. Predictable as sunrise. Instead of going to the gym, I drove to Brian's apartment in southeast Portland. The complex was older, paint peeling from the siding, parking lot full of vehicles that had seen better decades. Brian's unit was on the ground floor, and I could see his car parked in its assigned spot. He was home, or at least his car was. I knocked firmly on the door. No answer. Knocked again, louder this time. Brian, it's Dad. I know you're upset, but we need to talk. Nothing. The silence felt wrong, deliberate, like someone holding their breath and waiting for danger to pass. Walking around the building's perimeter, I checked windows. Most had curtains drawn, but the small bathroom window was cracked open about 3 inches. Voices drifted through. Brian's voice, unmistakable, and someone else. Male. Unfamiliar. Tuesday and Thursday at 3. Like clockwork. Old man's been doing it for years. That was Brian. His tone, clinical and detached. Not the desperate son from a week ago, but someone discussing a business transaction. And you're absolutely sure about the location? The second voice was deeper, rougher. The voice of someone comfortable with violence. Behind the false wall in the garage. Right side, about 4 feet up. The panel's held by magnets. Just pull it straight out. There's got to be 60, maybe 70 grand in there. All cash. My old man doesn't trust banks after his father got wiped out in the 90s. My legs went numb. I pressed myself against the building's brick wall, fumbling to activate my phone's recording app. My son, my own son, was planning to rob me, giving someone else the exact details of where Linda and I had hidden our life savings. Security system? The rough voice asked questions like someone who'd done this before. None. Dad's old school. Thinks living in a good neighborhood is security enough. Closest neighbor is Mrs. Chen next door, but she's deaf as a post and minds her business anyway. I crouched beneath the bathroom window, recording every word. Evidence. I needed evidence that this nightmare was real. Keys? Backdoor key under the fake rock by the patio. Same place for 20 years. I'm telling you, Marcus, this is the easiest job you'll ever do. In and out in 10 minutes while he's at the gym. And he won't even know it's gone until he checks the hiding spot, which he only does about once a month. Marcus. The name meant nothing to me, but the systematic questioning suggested professional experience. This wasn't some friend of Brian's in desperate straits. This was a career criminal, and my son had brought him into our family's life. Thursday, then. Marcus's voice held finality. This coming Thursday at 3:15. You park 3 blocks away and keep eyes on the street. Text me if anything looks wrong. I go in, grab the cash, out the back door, and we meet at your place to split it. 60-40, right? Like we agreed? You're taking 40% for information, kid? You're getting 30% for your dad's address and alarm code. I'm taking all the risk. A brief argument followed about percentages, but I barely heard it. The recording app showed 4 minutes of audio. 4 minutes of my son betraying every value Linda and I had tried to instill in him. 4 minutes of evidence that would send him to prison. I crept away from the window and returned to my truck, hands shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. Thursday. They were planning to rob me this Thursday at 3:15, while I was supposed to be at the gym. 2 days away. 48 hours to decide how Robert Hendricks would respond to his son's ultimate betrayal. By the time I reached home, shock had crystallized into something harder. Brian had made his choice. He'd chosen Marcus over his father, chose theft over honest work, chose betrayal over family. Now I would make mine. I spent Tuesday evening researching security cameras online. By Wednesday morning, I'd purchased a complete surveillance system from the Best Buy on 82nd Avenue. 4 wireless cameras, cloud storage, motion detection, and smartphone monitoring. The young sales clerk who helped me seemed surprised when I declined professional installation. Sir, these systems can be tricky to set up properly. We offer same-day installation for... I've been an electrician for 40 years, son. I can handle mounting 4 cameras. I paid cash and left with everything needed to transform my home into a fortress of evidence. The first camera went above the back door, angled to capture anyone entering from the patio. The magnetic mount attached easily to the door frame, and the Wi-Fi connection established within minutes. Through my phone screen, I could see a crystal-clear view of my back door and the fake rock hiding the key. Camera 2 covered the garage interior, focused specifically on the false wall panel where my money was hidden. Anyone reaching for that panel would be recorded in high definition from multiple angles. Camera 3 monitored the living room and main hallway. Camera 4 watched the front entrance. By Wednesday afternoon, every entry point was covered. I tested each camera systematically, walking through my house while watching myself on my phone screen. The image quality was remarkable. Clear enough to identify faces, sharp enough to document every detail of a crime in progress. Wednesday evening, I made a call I'd hoped never to make. Portland Police non-emergency line connected me to Detective Sarah Chen, who agreed to meet Thursday morning at the precinct. Detective Chen was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with sharp eyes that suggested she'd seen enough family crimes to make her cynical. She listened to my entire story without interruption, taking notes as Brian's recorded voice described my house layout, security gaps, and daily routine. When the recording finished, she replayed several sections, focusing on the planned date and timeline. Mr. Hendricks, this audio clearly establishes conspiracy to commit burglary. Your son and this Marcus individual are planning a felony. You're certain this is Brian's voice? Detective, I've been listening to that voice since he said his first word. I'd recognize it in my sleep. She closed her notepad and studied me with professional assessment. What exactly are you proposing? How do you want us to handle this? I want them arrested in the act. I've got cameras covering every angle of my house. Let Marcus break in, let him find the money, then arrest both of them with complete evidence. This Marcus clearly has priors. And Brian, I paused, feeling the weight of what I was about to say. Brian needs to learn that actions have consequences before he ruins his life completely. Detective Chen spent another hour reviewing procedures, legal considerations, and evidence requirements. By the time I left the station, she'd committed to the operation. Plainclothes officers would be positioned throughout my neighborhood Thursday afternoon. I would maintain my normal gym routine, providing opportunity for the crime to unfold naturally. Mr. Hendricks, you understand this will likely result in serious charges against your son. Conspiracy to commit burglary, possibly additional charges depending on what we find about this Marcus person. I understand completely. Brian made his choice when he decided to treat his father like a target. Thursday morning moved with terrible slowness. I made breakfast, read the newspaper, cleaned my already clean kitchen. At 2:30, I received a text from Detective Chen. Units in position. Maintain normal routine. At exactly 2:45, I grabbed my gym bag, made sure to lock both doors with deliberate visibility, and backed out of my driveway. In my rearview mirror, my house looked peaceful and vulnerable, exactly the way Marcus expected it to appear. The gym parking lot gave me a clear line of sight back toward my neighborhood. I parked facing west and opened the surveillance app on my phone. All 4 cameras showed empty rooms and quiet stillness. At 3:12, motion detection triggered on the backdoor camera. A tall man in dark clothing appeared, moving with professional confidence. Marcus wore gloves and carried a backpack. He located the fake rock immediately, extracted the key, and let himself into my home within 60 seconds. I pressed Detective Chen's speed dial. He's inside. Backdoor entry. Roger. We see him on your feed, maintaining position until he reaches the target area. The garage camera tracked Marcus as he moved through my house with Brian's floor plan memorized. He didn't waste time looking at electronics or valuables. He went straight to the garage, straight to the false wall panel, and pulled it open exactly as Brian had described. Detective, he's at the money location. He's found it. Copy. All units, move in now. Through my phone screen, I watched Marcus stuff cash bundles into his backpack, completely unaware that 4 police officers were entering through both doors simultaneously. The garage camera captured the moment he realized he wasn't alone, his head snapping toward the sound of heavy footsteps. Police, drop everything and show your hands. Marcus didn't run, didn't fight, just raised his hands with the resigned professionalism of someone who'd been caught before and knew resistance was pointless. Marcus Delaney, you're under arrest for burglary, conspiracy, and violation of parole. Detective Chen's voice came through my phone. Suspect in custody. Your son should arrive any moment for phase 2 of the operation. I drove back to my house, knowing justice was being served but dreading what came next. Police cars lined my quiet street, their lights painting the neighborhood in colors of consequence. Marcus sat handcuffed in one patrol car, staring straight ahead with blank acceptance. Then Brian's sedan turned onto my street. I watched my son's expression change from casual confidence to confused terror as he processed the police presence. He parked poorly and climbed out, looking like someone walking into their worst nightmare. Detective Chen intercepted him before he reached my driveway. Brian Hendricks, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit burglary and accessory to theft." "What? No, there's been a mistake." Brian's voice cracked. "Dad! Dad! Tell them this is wrong!" I stepped into his line of sight. The desperate hope in Brian's eyes died when he saw my calm expression, my obvious cooperation with the officers putting handcuffs on his wrists. "Dad, how could you do this to me? I'm your son." I looked at Brian, handcuffed and humiliated, facing prison time for trying to rob his father, and felt something unexpected. Relief. "Brian, you planned to break into my house and steal everything your mother and I saved over 40 years of marriage. You brought a criminal into our neighborhood, gave him detailed plans of our home." I stepped closer. "You chose Marcus over your family. Now you live with the consequences." "I thought you'd never find out. I needed the money, Dad. Ashley and I are drowning in debt. Ashley told me you lied about the medical bills. There is no crisis except the one you created." I watched Detective Chen guide him toward a patrol car. "Your mother spent 32 years trying to teach you integrity. Today, you learned that lesson the hard way." The patrol car pulled away with Brian in the back seat. I watched until it disappeared around the corner, then turned to help Detective Chen document the evidence recovered from Marcus's backpack. Every dollar I'd saved, every $20 bill from side jobs, every $100 from Linda's life insurance, all preserved because I'd been willing to treat my son like any other criminal. "Mr. Hendricks, we'll need a formal statement, but the preliminary charges are solid. Marcus has 3 prior convictions. He's looking at 5 to 7 years. Your son, as a first-time offender, will probably get 18 to 24 months with possibility of parole in 12. I nodded, understanding that legal consequences were only part of what had been resolved today. The larger justice, the protection of everything Linda and I had built, the validation of principles I'd maintained despite family pressure, that was already complete. "Detective, I'll testify to whatever you need." Both of them made their choices as adults. Friday's Oregonian carried the story on page 7. "Father's security system foils son's robbery plot." The article was factual but missed the deeper truth. This hadn't been about technology or police work. It had been about principles held firm under the ultimate test. Detective Chen called Friday evening with updates. Marcus had accepted a plea bargain for 6 years. Brian's attorney was negotiating, but the audio recording and surveillance footage left little room for defense. "Your son wants to see you, Mr. Hendricks. He's asked about visiting rights." "Detective, Brian made his choice about our relationship when he chose to rob me. That doesn't change because he got caught." I hung up and walked to the garage, removing the false panel one final time. $58,000. Every dollar accounted for despite Marcus's brief handling. The money was safe. The house was secure. My conscience was clear. Standing where Marcus had knelt just 24 hours earlier, I felt Linda's presence stronger than I had since her funeral. Her voice echoed in memory. "Robert, love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's just enabling." She'd been right about tough love, right about consequences, right about not sacrificing principles to keep peace. "Linda, I did what you would have wanted," I said to the empty garage. "Our son chose his path, and I chose mine. Sometimes the hardest love is the truest love." I sealed the panel back in place and climbed the stairs to my living room, where Mrs. Chen from next door had left a casserole with a note. "Robert, the neighborhood supports what you did. Standing up to family when they're wrong takes more courage than anything. You're a good man." At 7 o'clock, I disabled the surveillance cameras. Their purpose had been served. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But tonight I could rest knowing that Linda's principles had prevailed, that honest work was protected, that even the most painful betrayals could be answered with righteous action. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Whispered Vengeance, and share your thoughts in the comments below. To listen to the next story, click on the suggested video on your screen.